Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Seth Turner about shifting the leadership mindset around worker leave. Seth Turner, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thanks, John. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you today. You're joining us from the Denver, Colorado area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about shifting the leadership mindset around worker leave. The landscape is shifting and leadership mindset needs to shift if we're going to be strategic and impactful in leveraging leave as a tool in the total compensation package and how we attract and retain good people. So these are the types of things we're going to be exploring together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Seth's bio with everybody. Seth Turner is the co-founder and chief strategy officer at AbsentSoft, an absent management SaaS solutions provider that delivers scalable software to manage FMLA, ADA, disability, and other forms of leave easily, efficiently, and cost effectively. Seth has over 20 years of experience helping organizations solve their HR and absence management challenges. As an industry expert in employee leave management, Seth set out to build leave and accommodation software to help the biggest companies in the world take better care of their employees by optimizing their leave and accommodation experience. Prior to founding AbsentSoft, Seth held leadership roles at Hewitt Associates, Mercer, and Reed Group, focused on outsourcing and technology solutions for leave of absence and employee benefits. Seth has an MIS degree from Indiana University and an MBA from Northwestern University. Wonderful background. Pleasure to be with you. Anything else you would like to share by way of your background or personal context before we just dive on in?
No, not at all, Jonathan. That's just a long way of saying I've spent a lot of time doing leave and have a real passion for helping employers be more effective in how they do it and being able to focus on how they can improve their employee satisfaction and really drive that retention through leave management.
Yeah, well, thank you. And you have a tremendous background and experience in a variety of different companies doing this and helping a lot of different organizations to do it. And shall I say, I love the HR space. I got so excited when I was new, when I was a university student actually, and kind of getting excited. And then those first jobs and early in my career, getting into the HR space. But this idea of managing FMLA and ADA, that doesn't always seem like the sexiest kind of HR topic or the most fun. And so sometimes it gets a little bit of a bad rap, but it really can and should be a heavily leveraged strategic advantage for an organization. And so often employees have horrible employee experience around these systems where it's just frustrating and aggravating and just so hard to navigate, so hard to figure out what they're doing, how to do it. And so if we can alleviate any of those pressures, it really can be a differentiator in terms of employee experience and help you to brand yourself, your organization as an employer of choice.
Very much. And I think, when we started, that was all focused on how do we help HR process. I call it administrivia, but how do you get rid of that piece of it so you can spend time focused on your employees and dealing with the people that really need help? And that's what it comes down to, is how do we automate and make more efficient the things that don't add necessarily value to the transactional part of leave and make that leave a value added relationship and an engagement with the employee. I think everything shows how that benefits the organization overall from a productivity and just an employee satisfaction.
Yeah, for sure. Things have been shifting, right? Like we're in a slightly different world, perhaps a dramatically different world today than maybe 3 years ago. The pandemic really provided us with a lot of opportunity to reevaluate and assess, in some cases, undo some of the patterns of the past, challenge assumptions, and the way we've always done things. And in many ways, we've started to do things differently. One way that we've seen the evolution of the workplace and as we've moved into the future of work is that there just has been a shift in how people think about leave, the types of leave, those sorts of things. So maybe walk us through a little bit of what you're seeing on your end in terms of shifts and adjustments that have been happening during and as we've kind of been coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's changed so dramatically. And when I started doing this many years ago, it was all about leave abuse and how do we drive that down? And it was very punitive. Somebody asks for a leave and you send them through these hoops and hurdles to try to get one approved. And then, as we started to get to that 3% unemployment, people started to look at, okay, how do we use leave and make this easier and use it as a frictionless experience for the employees and keep them happy. And then the pandemic hit and all of a sudden leave rates go up 300%, from just people being out with COVID or caring for family members that have COVID. The states are passing lots of laws, the federal government's passing lots of laws, and it just became a real pain point for people. And so that's, I think, one of the things that's changed is just that also drove some awareness at the senior leader levels within organizations that they're trying to find out where their people are. And all the people that are managing those leads are doing it on spreadsheets or manually, and they can't find them. So it drove a real focus on how do we really account for our employees? How do we do that? And at the same time, there's been a huge shift in the paid parental leave and offering more robust benefits. Maternity and paternity are probably the ones that are at the forefront of that, but sabbaticals and other types of leave have picked up steam. And so I think employers are really looking at the fact that 401k plans are kind of normalized, healthcare benefits are kind of where they are. And so what's the next step in the in the war for talent? And a lot of that comes down to leaves and how can we offer them as a benefit that will attract people. I know we've hired 3 or 4 employees this year that were either in the process of adoption or pregnant at the time, and I think it allowed them to make a shift knowing that they would have that time even right when they came on board. And so I think we're seeing a lot of our clients that are looking at how do we offer more robust benefits than we're legally required to in order to use that as a differentiator as we go out and we compete for talent.
Yeah. And I'm curious, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it just kind of struck me as you were talking about everything during the pandemic and remote work and hybrid work and, people just navigating and trying to deal with, for example, I have 6 children, all 6 children were schooling at home during the pandemic. So my wife and I are both working from home, trying to help our kids with their school while doing our jobs. It's a nightmare, so I think we handled it fairly well and navigated that, but it was hard and lots of families were dealing with that. And so that was just one of many examples of the types of things people were dealing with that, whether they had COVID or not, was driving up leave. And really, this predated the pandemic, but we've started to see some companies move towards this idea of unlimited leave, unlimited time off, right? Unlimited vacation time. And there's been lots of critiques of this as well, by the way, but it's an interesting idea. And I'm wondering how that has fit into the landscape as you've seen things shift over the last few years.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a movement towards that. And I think, the success of that is, it's still up in the air. I think it does give employees a lot of freedom, but I also think it's incumbent upon managers and leadership to encourage them to use it. Because I think that, when you don't have a balance and you're not tracking to that, it sometimes leaves a perception in employees' mind they're going to be penalized for using it. And so I think there's just rolling out a policy like that and saying, all of a sudden you have unlimited PTO is only part of the step. The next is to make sure you're tracking and enforcing. And, we've seen some clients that go as far as to say everybody's off on this Friday, so you're not looking for emails from people, or you're not expected to be there, and you can actually take that break. Because I think, the other underlying trend coming out of the pandemic has been mental health and the impact there. And, so much is shown that just taking a break can help from, reduce some of that stress and give time. Because, I have two young kids as well, and that schooling at home and trying to, run a company full time it was a lot. And so I have great sympathy and commiserate with everybody that went through that. And I think it's shined a new light on the importance of us spending time with our kids and our families, and the value of that. And so I think we're seeing employers really try to put things in place to, continue on that momentum and give people the time to do that. And, still with, obviously we've got to drive business results. And so it's a tough balance for a lot of them. But I do think it all starts with, when you roll out a policy like that, you've got to figure out how you encourage people to use it. Because if you can't measure, if it's a benefit that nobody uses, then it's not really a benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of organizations have lots of things that they say are their benefits. And sometimes they just try to have the big long list be able to say to people, see, look what we do. But it's really hard to use, or nobody knows how to use it, or many people don't even know it's actually there. And so, yeah, it has to be utilized. It has to actually be relevant and matter to people for it to actually be true benefit. And you articulated well, with the unlimited leave issue. The critique of it is that actually there's been quite a bit of research that has shown companies that use unlimited time off, often their people use less time off. And that's unfortunate. And then it comes back to the culture within the organization and the modeling of senior leadership, and because what they do is what their people are going to do. And if they never take time off, or take very limited amounts of time off, then their people are going to feel like they're going to be, in some way, maybe not directly punished, but they will suffer, setbacks in their progression in careers, or just the way they're perceived if they take time off. And so we need to make sure that, whether it's unlimited time off, or we have kind of the structured leave and PTO kind of buckets, that we encourage people to take it, so that they can have work-life balance, so that they can monitor their own mental health and their own well-being, and make sure that they're taking care of themselves and their families, in addition to doing the work for the company. That's going to make their work and their efforts more sustainable, and in the long run, it's going to help the company be more successful. So anyways, that's kind of a little bit of a side topic and comment, but I thought it was worth noting. So,
and I think you made an excellent point I think you made an excellent point on it's the lead by example, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways that's important within an organization, but I think leading that PTO and saying, I'm going to be away, I'm not going to be checking email, and giving people the right to say that is critically important. Because people need that time. Everybody's working from home, they've got their laptop right there. And I was a remote worker for 20 years before this, and it's hard to walk away from your computer and lock it in your office and not go check it at 8 o'clock at night. And so you have to do a lot of things to make sure people do get that time to decompress and reset and re-energize to come back to it the next day when they're ready to go.
Well, and perhaps this is another slight side kind of tangential comment, but it just kind of struck me as you were talking. Some of this, it seems to me, kind of relates back to this idea of the quiet quitting that we see so many people talking about. And there's a variety of things going on there, so I don't want to oversimplify it. And I know it's a challenge that leaders are facing, but I do kind of bristle when I hear the idea that it's all on the employees who are quietly quitting, that these kind of lazy, entitled employees that are just trying to get away with doing the bare minimum. And I'm like, dude, all employees are constantly calibrating their effort. That's just the way it always works. And if you have a significant portion of your staff, your employees, your workers who are quietly quitting, that is a signal that your organization has some major issues around its culture, around its processes, around the workload, around the burnout of their people, etc. And so I think it's really important to encourage people take leave, to make sure that they're putting their holistic health as a top priority. And I was having a conversation with a CEO recently, who she was talking about this important position that they had, and she was frustrated because they'd gone through a couple different people, kind of great resignation stuff, where people just didn't stick around, and she was frustrated. And she's like, I know we can't pay that much. This is a really important position. I know it would be great if we paid more. We can't pay that much, but it is what it is. And I need to hire someone that, and she acknowledged, like, we're probably paying 10 to 20% below market for this position, but I need someone who's willing to give 1,000% every day and be accessible 24/7. And, I'm like, your expectation is completely ridiculous. Like, in what world are you going to be able to get someone to come and do that? And so sometimes we just need to reset and recalibrate our own thinking as leaders about what is actually reasonable. And if my feeling is that my people have to be willing to put in 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and I'm constantly putting the screws to them to get more kind of blood out of the stone, and I kind of discourage people taking time off, and blah blah blah. Well, guess what? People are going to burn out. People are going to quietly quit. They're going to recalibrate while they're looking for other options. They might end up leaving, and that's indicative of other kind of systemic issues and culture issues with an organization. So it's worth noting that, I think, and just reminding leaders that it's not all about your people being, potentially lazy or just entitled or trying to get away with stuff or do the bare minimum. Part of it's just self-preservation, survival, and reprioritization, of individual workers about what matters to them. Right.
Yeah, I think the pandemic changed everybody's mindset about, what's important to them and made them rethink that. And I think we see, and, we've, coming through startup life, it was always about productivity, right? Like, what are the results? And in many cases, we couldn't pay, market rates, but by changing some things, like, if you need to leave at 3 to go get your child at school and you're going to spend a couple hours getting it done, as long as you get the work done, we're good. And that's, I think, really become an important part of how we still manage people. And I think you hit on a great part with culture, because we doubled in size during the pandemic, and we had people that had never seen the office, had never been to Denver even. And so it really changed the way we think about how we onboard, how we build that relationship with new employees, how we really instill that culture of personal responsibility and collaboration with the team. And it takes a lot more effort now to do that, because you're not in the office all the time. But I think it's forced a lot of our leaders that felt like they needed to see people at their desks to say, let's measure, are they getting the stuff done that needs to be done? And just being present is not as important as what they're delivering. And so we've it's forced all leaders to rethink that relationship with the office and the work and with their employees, and to make sure that in this, especially in this really tight labor market, that we're providing a good experience for them, but that they're also they feel that we care about them and that we want the best for them from both a health and mental well-being. And that's it's really nice to be having these conversations now, because it's something within HR that I think everybody's wanted to do, but now it's at the forefront of if I hear employee experience 15 or 20 times a day from different clients and different prospects, and I think it's an exciting conversation, an exciting time in both the HR and the leave space.
As we consider the butts and seats thing, that has always been a pet peeve of mine for years, and that mentality persists. There's still plenty of people who feel like if you're not having like FaceTime in the physical office, if your butt isn't in your seat and you're not there from 7:30 in the morning until 7 at night, that you're a slacker, whatever. We all know that there are plenty of people who are slackers who spend all day at work. So that doesn't mean anything, and are people productive? Are they efficient? Do they collaborate well? Are they just creative thinkers? Like, none of that is directly correlated to how much time your butt is in your seat in the physical office space. So it's really silly. It's always been silly. I think more people recognize it's silly today than in the past, and particularly with younger people, they're just like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But there's plenty of leaders who still have that mindset. I run into it every day, and I think it's worth pushing back on and challenging. There are absolutely times when it's helpful to have people together in the office. And, if you have a particular reason with an objective for a meeting or something where bringing everyone together makes sense, then go for it. Absolutely. But there's a lot of times in a lot of types of jobs where it just doesn't matter. And having kind of arbitrary guidelines around butts and seats is silly. And it's again, that mindset and that culture is also what then drives a lot of people not taking the leave that's available, whether it's unlimited PTO or it's just kind of the traditional buckets of leave that organizations tend to have, that they just don't feel like they can, because they feel like they're constantly being monitored. And they just feel like, if I'm not making my physical presence actively seen, then it's going to hurt me. I've seen that so many times, and it really is silly. We need to get past it. I wanted to shift gears just a little bit as we get into kind of the final little bit of our conversation. It's a tight labor market right now. That could shift. We might be heading into a recession, but the unemployment rate's still really low. I think I saw a report out just a few days ago saying in the US there's 1.8 open jobs for every person who's looking. So clearly we still have a labor shortage. And so companies are short-staffed, reduced workforces, concerns about inflation and recession. All of that is on the table, and it makes it challenging. So how can companies go about offering leave or more leave as a benefit and make it more accessible and easier to do when they're already dealing with the workforce? I mean, I could understand how a leader could be saying, we're already at like 80% capacity. We're understaffed. We don't have enough people. I don't want my people going on leave because we need them here so we can, provide our products and services to the market. So what's your thinking around that?
I think anywhere where you can create a leave that's planned, you can manage it way better than the unplanned, right? And that's, I think, where these policies come in. If you can plan for somebody to be gone for a week or 2 weeks and shift in the short term to support that, number one, you still be able to hit all your production numbers and all those other things. And then on the second side is what tends to happen is if you continue to just drive forward is people start to burn out, and then you get these intermittent absences and things you can't plan for, which have a huge impact on your productivity, because then you're trying to bring in temps, you're trying to have people work overtime, and you create a culture of resentment around people that aren't there. And so I think anywhere we can structure it so that you're planning for that person to be gone and making, to your point earlier, making it okay for them to be gone, they're going to get more out of their time off. You're not going to see the business disruption you would see if, eventually they either, have to take some time for a medical or some other thing driven by that stress, or God forbid, they just quit, right? Because they can't handle that. And so I do think you got to shift that mindset to say, how do I use this to retain them, to keep them fresh, and to keep moving forward? And I think that's a big part of that that strategy and how you manage time off.
Yeah, I think that's right. Planning is helpful. And so just, if everyone can just be considerate and thoughtful towards their coworkers and coordinate a little bit. And if as a leader, you can, again, lead by example, have open conversations with your people, and be a team player yourself, and help others around you on your team to be team players. Like, I think most people want to do right by others, and most people want to be helpful with their team. Most people don't want to leave everyone hanging out to dry because they're gone. And so as long as we're having these conversations and there's not like a toxic, environment of silence and like no safety for people to just even express, I'm feeling burned out, I need to take a mental health day, I need, those sorts of things. As long as we have an environment where it's open and where we can share these things and talk about it and then coordinate, and plan in advance, that resolves a lot of the challenges and the issues. There was it was probably a month or so ago, but I saw this kind of this tweet thread where I think it was a fast food joint or something like that, and the manager was ticked off because they were having a hard time with like staffing and stuff, and so they came out with this policy, this like blanket policy. Oh, it was because people were quitting, so they came up with this policy that you have to give, instead of like 2 weeks notice, you have to give 1 month's notice before you quit. And it was like this kind of diatribe thing that went out to all the employees. And they're all, it's like a joke. Like, yeah. what are you talking about? And they all just quit because like, why are they going to be there? I mean, sometimes there's just kind of a nonsensical response. And I get it. It's in reaction to pressure. It's in reaction to the kind of the harsh challenges that managers and leaders are facing as they're trying to staff. I get it. It's hard. But you definitely want to create that culture where these things can be openly discussed and handled. Well, Seth, This has just been a real pleasure. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. No, you can reach us at www.absencesoft.com or contact@absencesoft.com by email, or feel free to email me directly, seth@absencesoft.com. So it's been a pleasure talking with you, John. And certainly it's an exciting topic. We could probably go for another couple hours, but I'm not sure anybody would want to listen to that. So thanks everyone for listening. And thanks again, John.
Thanks, Seth. It's been a pleasure. I encourage everyone to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Seth and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.